you see that people talking about their mind a lot in particularly meditation circles. And mo I mean, the general idea is that your mind is bad. It's causing all your troubles, and it's either called your mind or your ego. And when you get into some kind of self-awareness kind of um, exploration, maybe you go into a spiritual exploration, it's everywhere. This kind of pervasive feeling of, yeah, your mind is the cause of all your problems. All the misery that you go through, the suffering that you go through. Yeah, it's all your mind's fault. Bad mind. Um, and that's, everywhere that I can see. The only one I've come across that's not like that is Headspace. That meditation app. They not so much having a hard time with your mind, but most places, and certainly, my spiritual teacher Barry Long. God, he was fierce. He was fierce on the mind, and he used to call it the self. And like the way he would talk about the self, it was like venom dripping out of him. So for me, I don't like that doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right at all because for lots of reasons. But mainly it's just not loving, and it's divisive. You divide yourself on the inside, and yes, it's true. When you get down into it, you're not your mind for sure. Because if you're observing your mind, which happens naturally enough in meditation, or certainly the meditations I do, if you're observing your mind, then you couldn't be your mind. If you're observing your thoughts, then you're not your thoughts. But I think that's too simplistic, because it's instant by instant. Like Eckhart Tolle has got his book The Power of Now, and he's actually big into being down on the mind and similar. But then he was quite influenced by Barry Long anyway. So anyway, that's a whole other story. But his book about the power of now is very useful because, like, now it's a very difficult thing to approach. Like I've meditated on now for many years, and it's down to about 10 minutes, meaning I can get my head around. Oh, actually, that's not true. Probably about 2 minutes. I can get my head around a sort of a 2 minute kind of thing, but to really come into the moment, the instant. I've been talking about the instant lately, and so I find that easier to access, and it's useful for meditation because if you sit down to meditate, and your intention is to not think, and you start off and you turn off the pictures and you turn off the sound, you're not thinking, and then the next time you become conscious is that you're in the middle of a big thought and you go, oh, that's right, I'm meditating. And then you stop, right? So in the magical instant of realizing, oh, I'm meditating, or my intention is to meditate, so I'm going to turn off the sound, turn off the pictures. In that magical instant, you suddenly go from being in your thoughts to being observing your thoughts. I don't know what is going on with the camera. Yeah, you go from being covered by your thought to being observing it. And like you could say like that I'm observing my thought, so I couldn't be my thought. But and that is true. But another way of looking at it is I'm observing my thought, so I'm not that thought anymore. That's another way of looking at it. And to kind of go, oh, that's just my mind. It's just my mind thinking, and it's just naughty mind being naughty again. Monkey mind. You see people talking about that. I mean, that's kind of derogatory, isn't it? Because you're talking about it yourself. You're talking about a part of yourself. Like for me, it's easy to be compassionate with my mind, because I think of things more in terms of consciousness and unconsciousness. And it seems to me that the process of life is uh, unconsciousness or unconsciousness being informed by consciousness. And consciousness and love are kind of the same thing in my observation. Um, so if I start to, like, my mind is probably the least conscious part of me. Um, you can say that again, John. What I mean by that is I feel a lot of compassion for my mind because it's the front bit of me. It's the bit that has to interface with the world. It's got to deal with the tax man and the grocery store person and the electrician and the neighbor and everybody. I have to interact with all those people, and I have to. It has to explain what's going on. But what's driving me is not the front part of me. It's not my mind. It's the really deep parts of me that are behind everything that my mind can get glimpses of sometimes, but it doesn't really know. And like my life will move in certain directions, or I'll be moved to do things like I'll have an intuitive sense of, oh, I should go and do that, or I have an intuitive sense that this is happening, or that person, this is what's going on for that person, and I'll take action based on that. And my mind is like trotting behind, going, "What the fuck are we doing here? What are we? Why are we going here? Why are we talking to this person? What's happening?" And it doesn't know, but it has to interact. It has to try and sound like it knows what's going on, which it doesn't really. Um, like say all this stuff that I'm doing now, all this further emergence stuff, like 6 months ago, I had no intention of doing any of this. It just wasn't on the radar at all. But through meditation, because I mean, I've been meditating, I meditate all the time. Not all the time, but you know what I mean. I meditate throughout the day, and I've been doing that for years. So in meditation, like how like all this started was I was in the middle of meditation and it just popped into my head, oh, I should do this on Instagram Live. I was like, what? My mind was going, what? Why would I do that? And it was, but intuition is a powerful thing, and particularly if you listen to it. And it was like, well, yeah, it would be good to do that. Do that. I was like, what? Oh, okay. And like, my mind that I have a lot of compassion for, and possibly because I have compassion for it, it doesn't fight too much, and it doesn't, torment me about things like that. It's kind of because we've been through it a few enough times that something will come up in my intuition to do, and it will go, really, okay, and I'll do it, and it works out okay. So yeah, it popped into my mind to do to do the meditations live on Instagram, which was like wacky. It was like, what, you just want to sit there in front of a camera meditating for 15 minutes? That's insane. But again, because it was coming up in my intuition, it was like, yeah, you should do that. So I did that, and then the next thing was like, you know, people started to get in touch with me during the lockdown to work with them online, which again I had no plan on. I mean, the whole lockdown situation, that was new and different, and then people getting in touch and like, how do they even know I can do that? Because it's not something I advertise. It's not something I even talk about. I mean, craniosacral therapy is wacky enough. And then to kind of go, yeah, I can work with people one to one at a distance remotely. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. It's as powerful as seeing them in person. Yeah, something to do with quantum physics, quantum entanglement. Um, I don't really, I'm not too bothered as to how it works. I'm just more concerned with if it works. And yes, people are improving. If they've got health related symptoms, they're getting better. If they've got, just feelings of well-being, happiness, and knowing what the hell is going on for them, that improves as well. So yeah, it all works. But I wouldn't have advertised that because I mean I used to joke with my students, my craniosacral students about it and go, oh yeah, distance healing. That's how would you because how would you advertise that at a alternative health fair, which used to be popular, possibly still is. One of these kind of trade shows for alternative medicine where people are giving shiatsu massages and crystals and those kind of things, and they were quite popular, and that maybe they still are. I just haven't done them in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. I mean, did I ever do one? I went to one or two. Anyway, I used to joke going, oh yeah, well, the distance healing people would just have an empty booth, you know, because if they're there, it's like, so I used to joke about it. But it's like, again, intuitively, it's like, when how did I start? I think one of my students in Australia asked me if I would work with them in that way. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I did, and it was grand. And it was exactly the same, if in terms of being effective. So again, when people are getting in touch with me and my intuition was going, what are you doing? Or no, my intuition was going, yeah, you should start working more like that with people. And my mind was like, really? How is that? How does that fit with cranial? And then I'm fast forwarding here, but it's like, no, you finished seeing people in person. You close your practice is closed, but you're not going to reopen it. I kind of thought I was going to reopen it, but no, no, and so on. The intuition, my mind. So I feel for my mind. I have compassion for my mind because it's trotting along behind me, trying to, it's like the press secretary for me. So uh, it feels really unkind and harsh, and just an unkind way to look at it. To go, and it's a sort of very subtle way of beating myself up if I did it, which I don't, of going, oh yeah, it's just my mind, it's just my ego this and ego that, and it's like it's all me, it's all part of the mysterious thing inside me that I don't really know that much about, even though I have pretty, I wouldn't say good self knowledge, but I've spent a lot of time reflecting on myself and how I kind of work on the inside. But even with all that, I still feel like I only know a very small percentage of the mystery that is me and comes through me. So if I like when I see myself doing really stupid things or thinking really stupid things or thinking unkind things or cruel things or habitual things or things from my past or things that get labeled, with that bad mind kind of thing or bad ego, that's just my ego, or that's just the self or whatever way, you can tell like there's a harshness comes into the tone, and it's like, why split yourself like that? Why get in a fight with yourself like that? Like, for me, it's like, love every bit of me. I love every bit of me, and because I do, it gives me the space to, and the negotiation, the channel for negotiation. Because if you had a friend who was continually going, well, you're an idiot and you're the cause of all my trouble. Every shit thing that happens in my life is because of you. Um, like you'd start to resent that person. You'd like, God, I can't stand being around that person. It would just put me down all the time. And that's what it feels like when I hear people talking about their mind in that kind of derogatory way. It's like it's not going to change because of that. You're not, you're sort of taking this moral high ground with yourself. Whereas I'm kind of like, yeah, the front part of me is the least conscious part of me. And because of that, I have the most compassion for it because it's operating with the least amount of awareness. So, and it's doing its best. So I love it. I love it's trying and it's willing to listen to me. And yeah, sometimes it goes off the reservation, and I'll, do things that I probably not that good for me or helpful for me, or I'll think things that are not helpful for me or kind. But it will. It's a little bit. Sometimes it can be like a tantrum. I'll have a bit of a tantrum. I get really upset about something, and like it eventually will come back to this part of me, a deeper part of me, and kind of go, oh, I don't know what's going on. I thought I had all the answers, but I don't know have anything. I don't know about anything. And how can I not love that? Um, so yeah, I would discourage you from getting into a fight with your mind. I tried it. It's not like I just went straight to this way of looking at it. I particularly when I was very involved in with Barry Long, I tried to really, live the teaching as it was described, and yeah, beat the shit out of myself internally about my mind, about my ego, about sex, about all the stuff that Barry talked about. But yeah, eventually I came to that it wasn't kind. It wasn't kind. It wasn't, and more than it wasn't kind, which sounds like slightly judgmental, it just didn't feel natural to me. Like when I really looked into it, it was like everything that's said about it is true, but it's said from a very compassionless place, and that just doesn't sit right with me. So, and since I've been like that, it's been easier. And it's an ongoing negotiation I have with myself and with my mind. So now, like, and I say this every day when I do the live meditations, um, even though I spend, a lot of the time in the meditation, the actual meditation, bringing my mind back to not thinking, my mind is still up for it. It's still like, yay, meditation, yeah, let's do it. Um, Whereas there was a time when my mind was like, oh my God, this is so boring. Meditation sucks. It is so boring. Um, Whereas now it's okay with it. And I think that's because um, of that relationship that I was talking about, where I'm not I'm not out to get my mind, and I'm not trying to get rid of my mind. And I'm not trying to dominate it, because my mind also knows that it disappears every night anyway. Like I go through little death, or what death is possibly like every night. And I'm always surprised that people don't think about this more. Like I've thought about this a lot. Like it's like, particularly when people who are afraid of dying, it's like, but you do that every night. That's what it feels like to me, anyway. Like because fear of death. I mean, there is a biological fear of death. It's in your cells. You don't. It's just kind of a self-protection mechanism. You don't want all the cells to fall apart again and go back into being a tree and a bird and someone's fingernail or whatever. So that I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the philosophical fear of death, or the existential fear of death, where it's like, oh, what if there's no heaven? What if there's no afterlife? What if there's no reincarnation? What if it's just the end? Like particularly if you get talking to an atheist and like, nah, that's it. When I die, I'm just it. It's just gone. It's kind of chilly. It makes you feel kind of cold on the inside, and I like part of me is like, yeah, but that happens every night. Every night after I finish dreaming and I drop out of dreaming into deep dreamless sleep, there's no me. There's no, all the ways that I know myself, that, that's not there anymore. I've got no body, no country, no house, but more importantly, I've got no me. Like me that I, in the way that I know myself, is gone. It's just gone. And that doesn't bother me. Like if you went to sleep, um, and you thought, well, this is it now. You may not wake up. This might be the last time. This might be it. You're never gonna wake up again. Everyone would be like hanging onto the bed sheets. They wouldn't go to sleep. They'd be drinking coffee. They'd be crying. They'd be like, "Oh, this is so sad." That's all because it's a mental thing. You're like, the mind is thinking about it. Whereas because I go to sleep, secure in the knowledge that I'm going to wake up in the morning, then I don't mind. It's like, yeah, I just have a little break from existing. I'm just going to go, yeah, I'm gonna, okay. So let's say I sleep for 8 hours. I'm going to close my eyes and maybe I'm going to think a bit for 20 minutes to half an hour. Then I'm going to, get really crazy with my thinking and dream for another 2 hours or hour and a half. Then I'm going to, have a little break from existing for about 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. And then I'm going to, as I'm resurfacing on the other end, I'm going to do a bit of dreaming, crazy ass dreaming again. And then, a bit of thinking as I wake up and then back to existing again. But it's like, see, my mind kind of knows that. It's like, yeah, the deeper bit doesn't stop existing. In fact, I probably go into it more. But my mind, my frontal part, yeah, that just seems to, that goes. It's just gone. So my mind is a little bit humbled by that and a little bit afraid of it as well. But it also kind of is settled a little bit by it because it's like, well, yeah, I disappear every night and thankfully I reappear. But the deeper part of me, the silent bit, the bit that only talks in intuitive hunches and nudges, yeah, I don't think that disappears. I have a feeling that's where I go to. I just can't remember it. It often feels a little bit like, those restaurant doors for the kitchen, where it's like all the waiters go in one door and come out the other door. And they never mix them up, or there'll be a collision. Sleep often feels to me like when I drop out of dreams, I go through one door, and then when I come back from wherever it is, that great kitchen in the sky. No, I don't think it's in the sky. I don't think but that deep place. When I go through the indoor and do whatever I do there, when I come out again, as I come out, I forget. It's almost like it cleans it off me, or I can't bring it with me. And as I come out of the kitchen, it's back into dreaming and then whatever. But somewhere I have a feeling that it goes on. I just exist in a different way, or I exist in the deeper part of me. But again, that's just a feeling. But my mind kind of has that feeling of like, yeah, the deeper part keeps going in the deep dream, the sleep.